We're back with Kev, and we're doing the second part now of the child protection and safeguarding course that Kev compiled. What section are we moving on to now, Kev?
Okay, we're going to move on to the safeguarding section. Now, the first bit, first thing I need to say this is all the information that I'm going to give you is literally it's a postage stamp. Consider that you're going to write a book, and this is a postage stamp of information. It's very small, it's very succinct, and it by no means forms a safeguarding qualification. A safeguarding qualification, which you do need to have legally, according to the 2015 Children's Act, you do need a safeguarding qualification to operate a business where you have children in. This is just a whistle stop for you to be aware of things up until the point where you do get your safeguarding qualification. All clubs need a safeguarding officer, safeguarding qualification within the gym. And this part is on safeguarding. As I said, this would have been this is pretty much Claire's input, and as I said, I'll whistle through this as quick as I can because it's only a brief snippet of the depth that you need to go into to get your qualification. So, safeguarding kids, or safeguarding vulnerable people, safeguarding. So, as I said previously, a child is 19 up to in child protection terms. So, even though a child is 18, yes, they're legally an adult, but they're still in safeguarding terms a child. A vulnerable adult is anybody is 25 and under. So unless we're only going to deal with people who are 26 and above, every single person who owns a gym in the UK needs a safeguarding policy by law. And there are 4 sections to safeguarding kids. There's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. So emotional abuse is working where you're making the child feel rubbish, frightening a child, allowing a child to see another person being ill-treated. So that can occur in cases where there's like domestic abuse, and one of the parents is battering the other. And this can affect the emotional development of a child. What the child sees in the first 7 years of its life is videoing and audio playing, and that child use that as a frame of reference for every other thing that they experience for the rest of their life. So if they're seeing negative stuff, it's going to negatively impact them for the rest of their life. There's physical abuse, which is hitting, shaking, punching, poisoning, preventing them from normal social interaction. That all falls under the category of physical abuse, even though that's preventing somebody, that's a physical thing because you're physically stopping that child from interacting with their friends, people that they know and that they like to spend time with, being very controlling. That's a physical abuse. Then so you've got sexual abuse, which is forcing the child to take part in sexual activities. And there's also physical sexual contact, but also people need to be aware that there's non-contact activities, so such as viewing sexual activities, so making a child, for example, watching pornography. There was something I need to say as well about smartphones, and I'm in loads of different WhatsApp groups and I get sent some really funny things, but I also get sent some highly inappropriate things, and because my kids play games on my phone, as soon as I get something that's inappropriate, I'm very quick to delete that. And it's very important that people realise that, yeah, if you're in something that's inappropriate in your friendship group that's on your phone, yeah, your kids might be playing on the phone, but they might not only be playing games, they might be looking through other apps, through WhatsApp and Facebook groups and things like that. And if you've got anything on there that's, yeah, you're not intentionally doing it, but it is formed as a classification of abuse, and particularly if you know that you're allowing your child to see that, then you need to be having a word with yourself and stop that from happening at all. Then you've got neglect, which is failure to meet the basic needs of the child to other development. So not giving food, clothing, medical care, love, not giving a child a cuddle. That forms neglect as well. And those are the 4 categories that abuse falls into: emotional, physical, sexual, and neglect. Then The next part is what you're looking out for. So emotional abuse, we broke it down into what constituents emotional abuse. I will do when we decides to work again. Here we go. So well, you've got what are the triggers? What are you looking for when a child's extremely anxious, depression, running away, stealing and lying? There's a reason why they're doing that. There's a reason why they're hoarding money. There's emotional abuse going on there. There's a sudden change in concentration. So all of a sudden, they're happy-go-lucky and everything's going on. Then all of a sudden, instantly, they're a different person. You need to be flagging up that that's an issue that you need to be keeping an eye on. You've got sleep or speech disorders, which can occur particularly with a child at night. If they're really tired during the day, and all kids are murdered for not getting enough sleep, and I mean really, really tired during the day. Maybe they've not been sleeping at night. Why have they not been sleeping at night? When you consider that a lot of the abuse comes in the evening time or when the child's in bed. Extreme shyness, not just a bit of shyness, I mean extreme shyness, particularly when the child was previously very outgoing and very sort of happy-go-lucky. Physical abuse, signs and what to look for. Well, you've got inconsistent injuries, and I know that everyone will say my child's full of bruises. Both my kids, my son and my stepson, they're full of bruises, absolutely full of them, and you think that we beat them up, but where you're looking at inconsistent injuries, so maybe not necessarily just bruises, severe bruises, yeah, but were they injured all the time, injuries in unusual places, injuries that haven't had medical attention. So have you been to the doctors with that? Why? No, why? There was a child that I know who had a verruca for nearly a year. I've got a verruca. Well, have you been to the chiropodist for that? No, I'll go. Tell my mum to go and book an appointment. This is obviously when I was working in school. Have you had that verruca? No, I will do. I'll get it done. I had a verruca for a year. Wouldn't take the socks off for gymnastics. And then lo and behold, it came out that there were cigarette burns on the bottom of the feet, and the child was scared of taking the socks off. So where medical attention's not been sought, there's a reason for that, and coaches need to be aware, and parents need to be aware that because the abuse could be happening in the gym. So not only a coach is going to be watching this, but parents too. So if there's abuse going on in the gym that's being flagged up at home, or abuse being gone at home that's being flagged up at the gym, everybody needs to be aware of this. A reluctance to be seen getting dressed, and all kids need the privacy, but where there's all of a sudden there's a big change in behaviour where they don't want to be seen getting dressed in front of anybody. Is that because they're very body conscious where previously they haven't been, or is it the fact that they're hiding something on the body that's been a result of some recent form of abuse, and a refusal to remove certain clothes? Those are the things that coaches and adults should be looking out for with kids. You've got sexual abuse, so where you've got sleep disturbances, because obviously a lot of abuse occurs in the evening time. Urinary tract infections, particularly with girls, where they're being forced to have sex. Sexual thoughts or drawings, or where there's information beyond the years, so you shouldn't know about that. What are you saying that for? And so kids are getting younger and more wiser, and they're saying a lot of things that they shouldn't do anyway. But I'm talking very, very young kids, or particularly very, very knowledgeable kids, knowledgeable information from kids in that kind of 12, 13, 14 age bracket. Inappropriate sexual knowledge and sexual play, and all those things. If things are happening like that, those are alarm bells that adults should be very wary and looking out for within the kids. Then probably the easiest one to see is neglect, where there's frequent hunger. So kids, when people talk about neglect, you're talking about the kids who are starving and they've not got enough money to feed the kids, and the parents are broke, or they're spending the money on something else, and the parents are starving. So when the kid's got frequent hunger, again, that's a sign of neglect. But also the complete opposite of that is obesity, where the kids are just eating what they want because the parents are not really paying attention to what the child's eating. Frequent tiredness, untreated illness, as I mentioned before, where you're not going to the doctors, very poor hygiene. There's times where I've had to speak to people at school and in the gym. Come on, you're the smelly kid, blah blah blah. Wrong size clothes, and back in the day I had to wear hand-me-downs, which is not great because I had 3 sisters, but wearing the wrong size clothes is a sign of neglect, and not just the fact that parents are struggling with a bit of financial struggles, but the fact that the child's wearing the same clothes or had the same clothes on for a very, very long time. And then you've got clothes for inappropriate weather conditions, and it's the middle of winter and the kids coming out in just a shorts and t-shirt, and maybe that's the only thing that they've got, which is the clothing that they do have. So all of those things are signs that a coach or a parent needs to be looking out for as signs of abuse. And what you do need to do, if you have any concerns about them, is you need to write them down. All gyms should have a file, a log of anything that they go on, a child protection log, and if there's anything happening, write it down. And it might be inconsequential, but you write it down, and then 2 weeks later you've wrote that same thing down, and you look back, and 3 weeks before that there was the same thing, and then 4 weeks before that there was the same thing, and that helps evidence gathering for when you come to referring that to social services. There have been several times where I've informed social services for issues of danger or suspected abuse, and if it's real imminent danger, then the best thing to do is phone the police. That might be the local police, or you ring 999. There was an incident a few years ago where there was a parent drinking in the car outside the gym, and he was drinking, he was going out, coming in, going out, reeked of alcohol. One of the other parents who'd gone out for a cigarette could see him drinking in the car, and when he got back in, one of the parents checked, and there was a lot of cans in the passenger seat, so it was a no-brainer. I wouldn't have been able to forgive myself if that child had been in the car and the parent had had an accident or killed somebody else, if that had been the case. So for the majority of things, you're logging things on your child protection documents and child protection policy for social services, but in serious cases you need to refer it to the police, and in super serious cases you refer that immediately to the police by phoning 999. There are other things that you need to be aware of, which when you get your safeguarding qualification you'll go into in more detail, and all gym owners need to be aware now of radicalisation, where the child is taught extreme violent ideas based on political, social or religious beliefs. There have been instances of radicalisation within ring sports, within certain groups, and I know of a couple of occasions where that's been in the last 18 months that there's been radicalisation through ring sports, in kickboxing in this instance. Child trafficking, where children appear and then not appear. Where's that child? Look out for a domineering adult, or who accompany a child at all times and speak for the child. So is that your child, or is uncle bringing the child this time? Why is that? I mean, everybody gets to bring the child from occasionally, sometimes where grandma or granddad drop them off, but if it's people that they don't know, if the child's not allowed to speak for themselves, that's a real worry, and it's very much controlled by an adult looking after the child, and the child may appear fearful or withdrawn. It's very unlikely that for something like child trafficking is going to occur. However, you do need to be aware of it. It is on the syllabus for the safeguarding qualification. You also need to be aware of female genital mutilation, which is where it's a cultural thing, it's a religious thing, that young girls, they have the clitoris removed in a barbaric surgery, but don't worry, it's cultural, it's not, it's abuse, and it stops that child when they're older having pleasurable sex, and a lot of the time the parents have had it and the grandparents have had it and the great grandparents have had it. It's abuse, there's no two ways about it. It normally is with young girls, 8 years of age, and things to watch out for, like bleeding, going to the toilet, spending lots of time in the toilet, asking for sanitary towels, and sort of like 6, 7, 8 years old, that shouldn't be happening. So that needs logging. You need to log that in your file. Or you watch out for an period of time where the child's been away from the gym for a period of time and then comes back and they're having lots of toilet issues. That's also a sign of FGM, which, as I said, is less likely than something like neglect or sexual abuse, but certainly does need to be kept an eye on. There's also what you need to be aware of is the impact on a parent's care or physical mental health. So everybody's going through depression on Facebook. If you've seen on social media recently, everybody's depressed. Well, if they're posting that on social media all the time, what are they like in front of that child? Are they actually depressed? Are they actually suicidal? Or are they actually looking for attention? If they're looking for attention, then that's one thing. But if they're actually extremely low, extremely down, extremely suicidal, that's going to have a negative impact on the child. That becomes a child protection issue. And if that person's posting about suicidal thoughts on Facebook, you've got a duty of care to ring social services because the child's involved and you know there's a child involved. Not being safe and stable and secure in the home environment is paramount. And you need to make sure that is. Children need routine to end development, and if a parent is ill or they're posting loads of stuff, then is that parent able to look after the child properly? It might just be for attention, but it also may be that you as a coach go over to the parent and go, "How are you? Are you okay? I'm just noticing that you're posting a lot of things. Everything okay? Is there anything we can do?" And it may be that you can. Because anything that's negative is going on with the child, the adult is affecting the child, and if you can intervene in that way, that's going to be really beneficial to the child's environment. You've got to keep your eye on internet and social networking. Twitter, Facebook, it's all Instagram now, Snapchat, which terrifies the life out of me, because at least with Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, the messages are there. But if a child's being bullied or being sent something by Snapchat, it's there for an instant and then gone. There's no record of it. So for me, I won't let our kids have Snapchat. It's a bad thing. Not that there's anything wrong with Snapchat, but it's not suitable for kids. There's more instances of bullying now online than ever before. So before, kids were getting bullied in the classroom or in the school playground and then coming home. But now, because of social media, they're getting bullied 24/7. They're ganging up on people, they're calling people, they're name calling, they're getting the phones pinging all the time, and it's negative stuff, and that needs to be kept an eye on as well, because that's a form of abuse. There's also a high risk of children being exposed to sexual predators in chat rooms. So people who are not who they say they are, pretending to be 12-year-old Mike from Basingstoke, who's really into Thai boxing. "Oh, I'm a big fan of yours. I've seen you fight a couple of times. Oh, I'm up in, my grandma lives in such and such. Oh, can we meet up and I'll buy you a milkshake or something." Come on. There's a lot of online grooming which goes on from people who are not who they say they are, and adults and coaches need to keep an eye on that and who the children are interacting with.
No adult should be contacting minors via any of these platforms.
No, absolutely not.
Outside the club, or even within your club.
No, absolutely not.
And does that need reporting?
Well, the next thing I was going to say, the thing that really gets me as a bugbear is adults who post about kids, and child A wants to fight child B, so parent of child A posts something to child B about "my kid should fight you," then come on, that's an adult. That's not the child saying. And at the end of the day, it should be left to the coaches anyway. But the number of parents that jump in and get involved in things that they shouldn't do, it's really negative, and it needs to be reported. There's more kids, more adults posting negatively about kids on social media, and I get that the kids in a public eye, in the fact that they're involved in sport, but that doesn't give any adult the right to post something about them. They wouldn't say it to the face, so why post it on Facebook? Do you know what I mean? It's wrong. It's really wrong on many levels, and for me, I have a problem with that.
There's a bit of a lot of things now since the Pete Feely case, Kev, where they're hiding behind false profiles.
Yeah.
And I think some people are hiding behind kids' profiles.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, I think that was found. I think that was found from the Feely thing that he had. I think somebody said it may have been somebody like Andrew Lofthouse who said to me that he got a message from this profile that was later changed to being Feely, but when he looked back on the messages, it might not be Andy, and if it is Andy, I apologise, but he looked back and the messages were, oh, I'm a kid, do you do this, do you do that, oh, you're a good Thai boxer, or you're a good fighter, and when the profile's been changed to a later date and it's actually the adult, but that came out as a result of the Feely thing, which is disgraceful, really. But no parent should be contacting the child. I mean, there's a difference if there's a kid in your club and say, oh, don't forget, you need your trainers tonight because we're running, or we're doing this or we're doing that, or training arrangements are different. But even that, I would only really contact. I would only contact me personally. I would only contact the parent to pass a message on or something like that. And I know a lot of kids have got social media accounts nowadays, but it shouldn't really be done. I know there have been instances of coaches posting really negative stuff and inboxing kids saying this, that, and the other, and that's really poor. And that needs reporting. It's not acceptable.
From the juniors' point of view, Kevin, there will be a lot of the juniors that will watch this because of the platforms it's going out on. If they think they're getting inappropriately contacted,
yeah,
they should report it.
And that might be from their own coach. They need to tell the parents. That might be that another coach is contacting them. So tell your own coach and tell your parents. But the number one thing you've got to do is tell your parents. You've got to tell somebody. It might be a teacher in school, but that information needs to come out. Nobody should be posting. No adult should send a child a very sort of, I'm not going to say it, inappropriate, yes, but a message that can be misconstrued in any other way. It shouldn't be left up. Yeah, double intentions, things like that, which could have been read in a particular way as, oh, well, I only meant that. Yeah, but you didn't write it like that. It actually could have been meant to say that.
Just don't do it.
You don't contact the child. Yeah. Don't message the child. Or if you do, put it in a three-way conversation. You can do that on Facebook. Contact the child, the parent, or you find that some promoters as well contact the child, or they contact the parents direct. Leave the parent's job to looking after the child, and leave the coach's job to coaching the child and arranging stuff for the child. That's where it should be. But far too many parents sort of jump in and get involved in things that they shouldn't do, and then people get missed out, and that's a way of people missing out the kind of routes that they should go down. That's where potential grooming can occur, because people are going direct to somebody, going, yeah, but it's all right, we're friends, I'm going direct. No, you should go. That's the avenue you go through. That's the platform you go through. If you want to speak to the fighter, speak to me about it. If you want to speak to the child, speak to the parents about it. Do you know what I mean? If it's something that's not Thai boxing related, the people need to be aware that there's a very specific way, or even though it's not written down anywhere, but it's common sense, isn't it? You wouldn't send a message directly to a child. I mean, you can do if it was, or about this, that, or the other, was really two-dimensional, but not something that's cryptic, not something that can be misconstrued in any way.
And the associated friends and family, or friends of the child, if they know about it, so
yeah,
report it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've had a couple of things last few months, and I was made aware of it. And it's a horrible thing to do, but you've got to report it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if it gets looked into and there's nothing there,
Yeah.
great. But how could I?
If I've ever sent a message to a child and someone's concerned about it, show it to somebody, let them have a look at it, and let them make a decision, and that's fine. And yeah, absolutely, and there's no problem with that. However,
what we can't have, Kev, is what's happened previously.
yeah, which
Like
is
the Matt Kendall thing. Going back to that.
yeah,
If people were aware, or the Pete Feely thing, when people said, "Oh yeah, well we always had, these thoughts," or we knew something was going on. Well, now it's out in the open.
yeah,
Report it.
Yeah.
If there's nothing there, great, we move on.
yeah. Few things that you need to be aware of. This is the legal stuff. The first Children's Act was 1989. It protects the welfare of children who are at risk and also children who may need support services. And there's a link there with there's a link there with resources that you can access. The Children's Act 2004 places a duty on local authorities to make sure that services work together on a joint plan in partnership with parents, children, and young people. That was called the Common Assessment Framework. And it allowed, and it's more so as a result of the Baby P thing now, where all these different bodies were working independently of each other, and they probably still are to some respect, but it's where the police need to speak to social services need to speak to the school, so that everybody is working in that local environment for the needs of the child, that the police, the club, the social services, that everybody, the social worker, everybody is involved in meeting the needs of the child, and that's where the legislation came in from 2004. In 2003, the Sexual Offences Act 2003 split sexual offences into two groups, children under 13 and children under 16, all right? Something that people need to be aware of, the age of consent is not 18 for a coach and a child. So if a coach is having sexual relations with a 17-year-old child in their duty of care, that's grooming. It's not 16, it's 16. If two 16-year-old children have sex, that's consensual sex. If a 22-year-old lad is having sex with a 15-year-old girl, that's grooming. I'm sorry, but it's grooming. There shouldn't be such an age difference. The age difference being similar, that's fine. But then I've got a problem, because I can think of several cases where there has been a person training at a gym. I can think of several examples, and the person is still very, very young, get into a relationship with the coach. The child is probably under 16, but certainly under 18. In those cases, not only is that relationship inappropriate, it's criminal. And the 2003 Children's Act puts that into place, that the age of consent for the coach and a child is 18. And that is really, really important. And as I said, grooming isn't just 50-year-old men having sex with 12-year-old girls or anything like that. It's 22, 23-year-old lads having sex with 15-year-old girls. That's grooming as well. And those relationships are completely inappropriate. Why is a 23-year-old lad involved in a 15-year-old girl? When you think about it, it's a no-brainer. You just wouldn't. But those things are still happening in society, and they're probably happening in your clubs. And the thing that I'm very aware of, and the things that I've had conversations with the younger lads in our group as well, within our gym, is to be very aware of this, is that even though you might have been training with that person for a long time, if there was a relationship that was ever going to develop from there, if you're significantly older, that might seem to be that you've groomed them in that particular way, even though they're not necessarily an employee of the gym or they've not connections. They've kind of, because of that position of power, that they're like the trainee instructor or something like that. They're in a position of power, and that's a really dangerous place for that person to be in. and particularly to use that abusive, that power position in a really negative way against that child, because they respect their child as well, but it's really wrong for them, and they need to be aware of that. But also that the coach needs to be aware of that. The coach who's covering the whole thing under their umbrella, that they need to be aware that older relationships and younger relationships can also be seen to be inappropriate. The criminal, if it's the coach and it's anybody under 18, and that really needs to end. Because I mean, the Keith Nathan thing, that was a classic example of that. And in fact, that was younger because he was the older person. I think he was about 22, 23, and she was a lot younger, and that's criminal, and that is criminal. And it's one of the reasons why he was sentenced for the time that he was. And then the more recent Children's Act, 2015, sets out the formal requirements of people working with children. Every single coach needs an enhanced DBS as standard by law. If the coaches don't have it, they shouldn't be working with children. If they're not working with anybody under 26, if 26 or under, they need a DBS for vulnerable adults, and they need it for children by law. So if you've got like a sort of a DBS and it sort of skates the surface and it's not enhanced, it doesn't work. You're breaking the law. All safeguarding qualifications are mandatory. 2015. So in the game, in the game, there's probably over half the gyms that won't have somebody with a safeguarding qualification. Probably half of them don't have an enhanced DBS. And as well, the DBS really needs updating really every 3 years or so, because you could commit a crime in that time frame from when your DBS is done, and it does need presenting as, well, not presenting, but it does need to be done regularly to make sure that you're covered, ideally every 3 years, to make sure that you enhance. And they're only, what, 75, 80 quid? It's nothing to make sure that you're fulfilling the legal requirements. And have a safeguarding policy in place to make sure that your gym is safe. That probably covers the end of the first bit, and then what we'll do in the second part, we'll cover the other bits that you need. So that's the safeguarding thing. As I said, to do the safeguarding qualification is a 6-hour course. It's a 6-hour minimum. That's going to cover, as I said, a postage stamp of a whole book of the things that you need to be aware of. But you need to go away and do that to make sure that you're safe and that your kids are safe and the vulnerable adults in your gym.